Hello and welcome to my channel Willet's World, and welcome to this, the first video from my trip to North Korea I did back in 2008. I thought it was about time to put them up on YouTube, and what you'll see was recorded not by myself but by a cameraman we had who went with us wherever we went on the tour. But more about him and the tour a little later. Firstly, I just want to run you through a little bit about the background of how I booked the tour and what was involved. So back at the beginning of 2008, I was planning a trip to China and wanted to also take in both South Korea and Mongolia. Right in amongst these countries lies North Korea, and I thought to myself, can I go there as well? After reading several trip reports and seeing lots of photos online from other people who had visited, I decided that I just couldn't say no to visiting myself. In fact, I was itching to go, as I really wanted to delve behind this last bastion of Soviet-styled communism. North Korea, officially known as the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, is the last remaining relic of the Cold War and the most isolated country on the planet. You can't just simply fly in or pop over the border from China. Instead, the only way you can visit is to go on a guided tour. I investigated on the internet about who offered tours there and quickly found out that only a handful of tour companies worldwide were allowed to bring tourists into the country. I ended up choosing a tour through a Swedish company called Korea Konsult for a couple of reasons. Firstly, they happened to offer a tour that started in Beijing around the same time I was planning on being in the city. And secondly, their prices were slightly cheaper than tours offered by other travel agents. I signed up to one particular tour that was based around attending a World Cup 2010 qualifying match in the capital Pyongyang. It would start on the 3rd of June 2008, a date that will be forever ingrained in my head, as it's not every day you get the chance to go to North Korea. The tour agent sent me a visa application form, which as you can see was very straightforward. Just a single A4 sheet that had information to fill in on both sides. Other than them wanting to know my parents' names, addresses and occupations, there were no surprises and it all just seemed too straightforward. The only other information I was given before the start of the tour was that I would have to collect my visa and flight tickets for North Korea from a North Korean official in Beijing the day before the tour started. And that was that. I was confirmed on a tour to one of the world's most secretive nations. What was I thinking? So fast forward to that day before the tour started, and I'm in Beijing at the hotel where the tour company had told me to meet up with the North Korean official. He first gave me my visa, which came in the form of a green card with one of the passport photos I'd sent on the application form stuck on the inside. He also gave me my one-way flight ticket to Pyongyang for the following morning, leaving at 11:55, and said to be at the check-in desk by 9:30. And that was that. It was all a bit of a sigh of relief because the whole tour had been in his hands. Without my visa and flight ticket, that would have been that. No trip to North Korea. The following morning I took a taxi to the airport and found the check-in desk for North Korea's airline, Air Koryo, which at the time was said to be the world's only one-star rated airline out of a total of 681 reviewed by Skytrax. I handed the girl behind the desk my passport, who seemed for some reason to wonder where I was from. I then handed her my green visa card and flight ticket, and luckily all seemed to be okay as I was given a boarding pass, and that was that. I was now officially flying to North Korea. This was the plane I took to North Korea's capital, Pyongyang, a Soviet-built Ilyushin Il-627M that I think was built sometime in the 1970s. Upon entering North Korean airspace, we were informed over the intercom that we had entered the DPRK a land that had been freed from the two great imperialisms, the US and the Japanese, by the great leader Kim Il-sung in a single generation. The propaganda had well and truly started, and we hadn't even arrived in the country yet. We came into land in what looked like the middle of nowhere with just a few buildings dotted around. We all exited the plane and walked towards a waiting bus under a grey overcast sky. I sneaked off a few very quick photos of the plane and terminal building, which featured a large portrait of Kim Il-sung on its roof that was very similar to one that I saw in Beijing, that of Mao Zedong in the Forbidden City. The terminal building was full of guards and airport officials, but despite this, passport control ended up being a breeze, and I only had to wait about 20 minutes for my backpack to arrive on the baggage reclaim carousel. It was then scanned through an X-ray machine, and as it went through, I was asked if I was carrying a mobile phone or laptop, to which I replied that I wasn't. However, I did have to show my camera, which the guards said I could keep. I then walked out of the terminal building to where my fellow tour members were waiting beside our Japanese right-hand drive tour bus, which I found a little odd as the Japanese are even more disliked here than the Americans. We all got on board. There were 12 of us in total, meaning that there were plenty of empty seats to choose from. My tour group was made up of an international mix of people. Anine and Christian, a Norwegian couple I'd met at the hotel in Beijing whilst collecting my visa and flight tickets. John from Brighton in the UK. Another John who was with his son Peter from Norfolk. Nick from Nottinghamshire with his Spanish girlfriend Carolina. Mike from Denmark. Icelandic Torfi. Giovanni from Italy. And Luke from Tasmania in Australia. We were then introduced to our two tour guides, a guy called Kim and a young woman called Shay. As well as them, and as I said before, there was another chap who was to be our cameraman. We were a little bit wary of his motives at first and wondered whether his footage of us walking around would be used for any propaganda purposes. However, he turned out to be a really nice guy, and we all quickly warmed to him as we could buy a video CD of what he filmed at the end of the tour, which is what you will see in this video and others in my North Korea playlist at the top right of your screen. I ended up nicknaming him Mr Spielberg, which seemed rather apt, and which stuck during the whole tour, as others called him that as well, as we never did find out his real name. So thanks for the video, Mr Spielberg, or whatever your name is. Now I'll be jumping in and out of the video he filmed by also showing you some photos that I took. So without further ado, here are the first set of photos, as Mr Spielberg didn't film these areas. We were first taken to what was described to us as a children's palace. Upon arrival we were greeted by a guide, she could have been a teacher, and led into a classroom where children were doing calligraphy paintings using thick black brushes and ink. They were all very orderly with nice, clean, crisp uniforms on, but didn't look up at us at all, which I thought was a bit strange and not a natural reaction. Another classroom had children doing embroidery. After the artisan children, we were led into another classroom that featured more children, this time holding huge accordions that nearly dwarfed them as they were all sitting down on little stools. They started playing a short tune, to which we applauded afterwards. We were then taken into other classrooms with children, some of which looked like they were only 5 or 6 years old, playing instruments such as guitars, grand pianos, electronic keyboards, and the kayagom, a 12-string traditional Korean zither-like instrument. They were all very talented and well accomplished. One thing that I did notice in every classroom was 2 framed photos of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il hung up high on the wall, looking down on everyone. We were to see a lot more of this throughout our week-long tour. Next up on our classroom tour were children using Acer PCs. Now this was quite interesting given that the country, at least back then, didn't allow internet access. What was more interesting was that the PCs were using the English version of Windows XP and not the Korean. The children were more grown up here in their early to mid-teens and were all sat at desks with their backs to us. None of them ever turned round to look at us, which again was a bit strange. We then walked through a wide corridor that featured a whole range of stuffed animals which were used in biology lessons. Next, it was a walk through the upper floor of a large open hall that featured several large chandeliers. Here down below us were a whole load of children doing taekwondo, with boys at one end of the hall and girls at the other. The final part of the tour around the Children's Palace was a song and dance performance for not only us, but for other tourists, as well as locals and parents. Various children, some of which were very young, came on and sang, danced, and played instruments. This is the point where Mr Spielberg starts recording his video, so I'll play this for you now. After visiting the Children's Palace, we were taken to our hotel, the Yanggakdo International. It opened in 1996 and was North Korea's first luxury hotel and is said to be one of the best tourist hotels in Pyongyang, built on an island in the Taedong River. We entered the posh lobby and walked up to the reception desk where we were all given keys to our rooms that were located on the 39th floor. The hotel had 47 floors altogether. My room was very well decorated, clean and tidy, with everything you'd expect from a Western 4 to 5-star hotel. It included a TV which interestingly featured BBC World News on one of its channels, where funnily enough they showed a report about North Koreans having to eat tree bark as everyday food was meant to be in scarce supply. I was amazed that I was able to see this, given that I was actually in the country. One thing I did pretty much as soon as I entered the room was to double check that there wasn't anything funny going on behind the mirror, as I'd read reports of guests being spied on from secret communication rooms located on a mysterious 5th floor, whose numbered button didn't exist in the lift. This floor is said to be out of bounds to guests, but can actually be accessed by walking downstairs from the 6th floor. It has occasionally been visited unofficially by tourists exploring the hotel and reported to be further split into 2 separate floors with mostly locked rooms and decorated with propaganda posters. Maybe I was just getting a bit paranoid, but then again, this was North Korea, and who really knew what was going on here? After unpacking, I headed back down to the lobby, where we were then led into one of the hotel's restaurants, called the No. 2 restaurant. Here we were served food that included soup, bread, beef burgers, salad and beer by waitresses wearing traditional Korean dresses. Afterwards, we all headed off to explore the hotel, where I walked around with Luke and John. We found in the basement a 3-lane bowling alley, a swimming pool, a billiard table and ping pong tables. There were also a few shops that sold food and snacks and drinks, as well as other items such as traditional Korean dresses and even some old cassette playing Walkmans. There was also a bookshop that sold propaganda literature, a bar on the ground floor near reception, a casino and a Korean-style karaoke bar. After looking around, we all decided to head up to the 47th floor, which featured a revolving restaurant and bar that wasn't actually revolving at all. We chatted to some other Westerners who were on another tour, as well as chatting to the bar girls whilst drinking our beers. And that was day 1 of my tour to North Korea. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please give me a like, why not comment down below, and also subscribe to my channel so as not to miss any more videos from North Korea. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.